a high-rise building is completely destroyed after information obtained by Israeli intelligence about the presence of Hamas's leadership's office or other service premises in the building was acted on. Yeah, that's what I want to say. After information obtained by Israeli intelligence, there's just such a lot in this one sentence. It's really hard for me to simplify it, guys. It's really hard. Let's leave that for the moment, but be aware that that's something that I'm not keen on. Okay, so we've got Israeli intelligence. Also, the strikes were delivered at the houses in which the leaders of this movement could have been staying. And I preferred this to could have stayed, just because I wanted to put them right there at the time when the missile struck. Because that's what we want to say, that they could have been sitting in that building right at the time when the missile struck. By the 16th of May, the death toll among citizens of the Gaza Strip has been estimated at more than 100 people, and a number of wounded, several hundred. According to official information, casualties among the population of the Israeli cities that suffered from Hamas strikes and among servicemen of the Israeli army, it's got to be a the before the Israeli army, the Red Army, the US Army, have not exceeded 10 people. Have not increased the figure of, no way, have not exceeded 10 people. Okay, and then it's clear, we use this verb exceed, meaning has not gone above, this number. The number of wounded is estimated at approximately 200 people, according to official data. Just in the city of Ashkelon, during the night of the 12th of May, nearly 100 people were wounded and 2 killed. Now, I want to make one thing clear, that casualties, I actually looked this up to check, because we mentioned casualties here, and I wasn't sure if my student understood this, but casualties, as I understand it, and as the dictionary explains, it says it includes dead and wounded. So I'm not sure that my student realized that, but I just want to make that clear, that casualties means dead and wounded. Okay, and we use this just in the city of Ashkelon rather than only in the city of Ashkelon. But I think just works better here, just in the city of Ashkelon. Okay, from the military point of view, the most interesting part in the newly erupted Arab-Israeli conflict is an antagonism between Hamas missile strikes and the Israeli anti-missile system Iron Dome. According to mass media information, the strikes affected the cities situated near the Palestinian territory. So near Palestinian territory. I'm going to pick that out again. I've missed that. This fact, and also some video footage. Footage is uncountable. You can't say a footage. You've got to say some footage. Taken on the spot, give reason to believe that Hamas has performed strikes on Israeli cities using Qassam and Quds 101 types of missiles produced on the territory of the Gaza Strip. These missiles have a short range of fire. Now, this is a noun of noun because it's a range, a short range, a long range. There are many different ranges of fire. This one's 10 to 18 kilometers, and this one's got a short range of fire. And they are fitted with a small warhead of 10 kilos, which matches to the noun of noun, the weight of an 85 millimeter artillery shell. And it's just because there are many, we're just talking about one of many 85 millimeter artillery shells. But it's got to be the weight, because this is a specific weight. Maybe it's 6.5 kilos. Maybe it's 20 grams. I don't know. The weight of the noun of noun. Missile strikes are not the only asset in this conflict. Okay, I'm not sure if we'd say asset here. I suppose militaries have assets here and there, the tanks or air force or, the different ways they can attack the enemy. Maybe, but I wasn't sure. I thought maybe issue. Because the next one I didn't really think was an asset. I put a semicolon here to stop the comma splice, and then one can see Arab and Jew bashings too. So you mean fights here between people on the streets, when people are chasing, so civilians fighting each other, I understand. So I wasn't really sure that was an asset. I wasn't sure what you meant there. Just checking all of the questions. Okay. The analysis of the video of the repulsion of the strikes, not the strikes repelling. Again, I prefer the repulsion of the strikes. And notice repulsion, there is a noun that exists, and so don't avoid the gerund. when you've got a noun. Shown in open sources confirms that the strikes were performed by salvos carrying either several missiles or several dozen missiles. Yeah, we say several dozen missiles, not several dozens of missiles, several dozen missiles. The duration of one salvo can be evaluated from several dozen seconds, not several dozens of seconds, several dozen seconds, up to 1.5 to 2 minutes or more. Thus, the density of targets being hit was very high. It was possible. I found it weird to say it could be possible. Yeah, you're just saying, no, it was possible to observe. It sounds like you're saying it was possibly possible. Yeah, when you've got a could be, which means maybe, possibly, and then you've got a possible. Yeah, I think it was possible is best. It was possible to observe from 2 or 3 to 7 or 8, you might just say several, missiles in the air simultaneously, perhaps in the sector of fire assigned to one battery. At the observed speed of flight, missiles can cover, and I've put a comma, yeah, I always separate these long incomplete thoughts or prepositional phrases, fronted adverbials. Missiles can cover this range within 30 to 60 seconds, flying 15 to 25 seconds in the effective anti-missile engagement area, if, although I prefer assuming that, we can evaluate correctly from published videos. So I do prefer assuming that there. I thought it sounded better. The visual dynamics of the anti-missile fire give, yeah, because dynamics, give reasons to assess the Iron Dome system as a very effective one. This, not what, this is also confirmed by statistical data. I keep saying how we use this to replace clauses, yeah? And I think this is referring to the fact that the Iron Dome system is a very effective one, yeah? And this fact is confirmed by statistics, by the statistical data, or by the statistics. But statistical is the adjective, statistics is the noun. Oh, excuse me. Previous experience, yeah, not the previous experience, just previous experience of repelling such attacks. Perhaps you're thinking of noun here, previous experience of, previous I would say is what the main reason why you don't have a the here. Previous experience, you're talking about many different experiences, yeah, of repelling such attacks. So I'd say previous experience of repelling such attacks has shown that the Qassam and Quds 101 missile interception probability under these circumstances by the Iron Dome system equals 0.7 to 0.85. Hence, only 300 to 600 of the 2,000 shells fired by the 14th of May could have reached their, not its, because you've clearly got plural, targets. Though high dispersion or low accuracy and low reliability reduce the effectiveness of this fairly primitive weapon, not enough primitive, definitely not. Enough goes after adjectives, but before nouns. Yeah, I don't have enough money, enough time, enough work, but it goes after nouns. Yeah, is it hot enough? Is it big enough? Is it cheap enough? So fairly primitive weapon. The number of missiles which have reached their targets ought to be considered significant due to the fact that the firing is performed at urban areas, and even with very high dispersion of missiles, there is a high probability of, and notice that this is a probability of, a lot of, a few of. This is when you use an A, yeah, when you're dealing with kind of vague quantifying expressions. They're vague, yeah. A high probability of widespread devastation in Israeli cities. I didn't like severe destruction. I think it's much better, I think it was severe Israeli city destruction as well, but widespread devastation in Israeli cities. This assumption is confirmed by videos from the palaces hit by the strikes, where fires and severe damage were observed. We do say severe damage, we don't say sufficient damage. You might say lots of, I understand you mean enough damage, but enough for what? Yeah, enough for what? You'd need to be specific. It sounds strange to say they had enough damage. Yeah, it sounds vague in English, like, well, enough damage for what? Enough damage to make everybody leave? Or you've got to be more specific if you're going to say enough or sufficient. Severe damage were observed. In this connection, official figures of Israeli casualties seem to be very low. The number of wounded doesn't match the number of killed. I thought this was a bit vague because it sounded like they're not the same, but you wouldn't expect them to be the same, the number of wounded and the number of killed. But I know what you mean. You mean that it doesn't match the normal ratio of wounded to killed. And that's what you go on to say, recognized by the Israeli party. According to the experience of many previous wars and conflicts, if the party to the conflict recognized 10 casualties, the number of wounded should be recognize that the number of wounded should be 4 times lower than that of killed. Yeah, I don't really like should have been, because that sounds like you're giving advice in the past, but you're just talking generally that every day, every week, every year, if one party recognizes, in fact, that's what I think is confusing you. Let's change it to that. So, according to the experience of many previous wars and conflicts, I think we're doing 0 conditional here. If the party to the conflict recognizes, excuse me, 10 casualties, the number of wounded should be 4 times lower than that of killed. This gives reason to believe that Israel probably has significantly understated the number of casualties, at least by 3 or 4 times. This practice, applied by the Israeli authorities, look, and he's got it right down here, he's decided that he knows the adjective Israeli, is quite reasonable and is meant to prevent panic, not to avoid panic. It's meant to stop panic, to prevent panic among the population. And hence, this means that Palestinian losses could match those of the Israeli population. Yeah, not could match the same of, could match those of the Israeli population. In other words, despite the extreme military technical supremacy of the Israeli army. Now, remember, it's despite plus noun, despite the fact that plus clause. Yeah, it's not despite the fact of plus anything. So get rid of that one, get rid of fact of. Just despite the, and this is a noun phrase, the Israeli army, or the military technical supremacy of the Israeli army, is a noun phrase. So despite the extreme military technical supremacy of the Israeli army, Hamas is still able to inflict, able to do, always to be able to inflict significant damage on the Jewish state. And it is obvious that finding a mutually acceptable solution, it's got to be a solution, mutually acceptable solution, as soon as possible, is of interest to both parties in the conflict. So I'm sure you all agree that that's actually quite a neutral essay, and it's really just one that's describing what's going on there. I don't think it comes at the conflict from any particular position at all. I think it's very neutral, and that's not what's interesting for me. What's interesting for me is the language, and I think he's got a great style. I think a lot of sentences in this essay which sound really good. I know he's done I know this is a translation, and that's why some sentences are so wordy, because he's trying to keep it close to the original. And I think when you do that, it does mean sometimes that you get some very wordy sentences. So let's have a look at what people have written. Maybe he meant aspect, not the only aspect not the only aspect of this conflict. Whereabouts is this? I'm not sure where this is. Not the only aspect. I'm sorry, I can't see where that is. Sorry, I can't see where that is, Alexander. I'd put in this regard. So as in not the only aspect of the, in this connection doesn't sound. I know what you mean, but I have heard it before in this connection. In this regard, I agree. It does sound. Well, let's have a look. Quickly check it. In this regard, official figures seem to be very. Yes, I do agree, Alexander. Good criticism. I do agree. That is better than in this connection. In this regard, that's an excellent point, Alexander. I will continue to listen very carefully when you write something. Clearly, you've got some good points to make. Okay, yeah, okay. I was umming and ahhing about whether to keep it or not, but in this regard does sound a lot better. Okay, so if you've got any questions then about this or the previous lesson I've just done on the same essay, please ask. If you've got any other questions at all, as long as it's not what does this word mean, then please ask now, because if not, I'm going to get ready for my next student who should be coming along in about half an hour. So active and passive is a long thing to explain because every single tense and gerunds and infinitives have passive forms. But the good news is I have made a video on passive and active forms, and all you got to do to find it is look for it. You've got to put Mr. Skype Lessons, active, passive, into your search bar, and you'll find it. And you'll probably find some others as well on some very similar themes. So yeah, please do that if you want to find out more about active and passive. Okay, you are welcome, Alexander. Hi, Master. Yeah, I'm going to be doing another vocabulary class later today, probably, if I get time. I might even do one in a few minutes, but I've got to check that I'm ready for my classes first. But I might do one in a few minutes. We'll see. Okay, thanks for everybody for coming. See you all soon.